Hello and welcome to episode 55 of Throwin Elbows. I'm Dan Darter, the senior editor of Cageside Press, alongside Heath Harshman, star writer, star podcaster, and two-time picks champion.
There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
You're getting it. You'll get used to it. It rolls. I say it to myself every day. I don't know.
The thing is, it hurts. It hurts saying it.
Well, and I'm making my run too. I did.
Yeah.
Did pretty good this weekend. I know Jason's looking behind him. He's trying to act like he's all cool about it, but he knows. He knows what's up.
Mm-hmm. So it's episode 55. Hopefully, it will be more entertaining than the finale of this season of The Bachelor. And if you want to catch us on Twitter, you can do that at Throwin Elbows, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Stitcher, Throwin Elbows MMA, and our written work is on CagesidePress.com.
The Bachelor?
This week, The Bachelor,
we're just going to...
Terrible finale. Terrible.
I mean, as someone who's seen 0 minutes of The Bachelor, what were you expecting? Like, I don't know, isn't that what you're kind of asking for?
I guess. The thing is... it's surprising how dumb he is. That's the thing, because it's like, I got roped into this by my girlfriend.
Oh,
disclaimer.
Of course. Sure.
Yeah, and he's the dude. He's just complaining about how he just wants to be loved back, and meanwhile he's got 3 girls left. 2 of them outrightly declare that they love him, and one of them doesn't. He dumps the other 2 and just pursues the one that doesn't love him. Meanwhile, he's saying, "I just want to be loved back." And it's just infuriating to watch as he, go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's fake, right?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I shouldn't have to, I feel like this is like the talk that my grandma had with me with wrestling when I was 11. But instead, she just kept going, "I don't even know why you like that. That's fake. It's all fake. It's all," and just ruined wrestling for me. It was the worst thing. And I feel like I don't want to do that to you right now. So we should probably move on. But Danny,
hard to watch.
You get what you get when you watch The
Yeah.
Bachelor. That's on you. And I mean, we're no better. We watch second tier MMA on tape delays. Like, I don't know. That's basically the sports version of The Bachelor. And luckily, things are kind of turning around with like FS1 pacing not existing. So I'm not necessarily judging you, but like, make better choices. I don't know. That's my advice.
I wish I did. But new season of MasterChef shards, so reality TV is back on the menu.
Oh Lord. That's why this is why I'm single. This is exactly why.
You're safe, man. You're safe. This week, BJ Penn's fighting again. ... For some reason, boom roasted.
Boom roasted.
Shout out to Ben Askren and that whole string of tweets.
I wish I didn't love it, but I do.
Oh, they were great, and it just like throughout the day he would just post one. They weren't like back to back to back. He was in different places each time. I loved it. The ladies taking over UFC 238. 3 fights announced, all 3 of them in the women's divisions, and a fun card of London from London rather is on the docket for this weekend. But first, we've got UFC Wichita on ESPN Plus. Junior Dos Santos beating up Derek Lewis in the main event, and he looked great. It was a really, really fun fight, and in that heavyweight division, he might just be nearing a title shot again. He's got 3 straight wins. So, after that wild fight, and those 2 moments that Derek Lewis was on the ropes and rocked JDS in response, just great fight to watch, first off. But what's next for both these guys? You got Derek Lewis, who once again reached the top of the ladder and comes up short. And then JDS, who seems to just never go away. He had those alternating wins and losses for a while, but now he's on a 3-fight win streak. And all of a sudden, he looks to be a top contender in that heavyweight division with Stipe, the guy who's got him seemingly figured out now, right there with him. But Stipe's also not interested. So what do you do with JDS? Do you bypass Stipe and fast track him to a title shot? What do you do?
I mean, DC has options, and so I wrote an article earlier about what Stipe should do if DC isn't available. He's not available because he has plenty of other stuff to do. And a fight with JDS, like, it sounds, I think it's a lot better on paper than it would be in person. Like, JDS definitely looked good, but I was surprised. I mean, I guess he won by a second round TKO, but I was surprised at how it wasn't the way I thought he would win. He didn't land super consistent, but he landed enough, obviously, and Derek Lewis apparently wasn't 100%. But I just felt like it was such a Derek Lewis fight. I feel like that's just, you know exactly what you're going to get when Derek Lewis fights. You know about the level of the guy he's going to beat. You know about the level of the guy he's going to struggle with and what he's going to struggle with. And I don't know. It was just very predictable whether or not he was injured or not. But to get back to your question, for JDS next, yeah, I think Stipe makes sense. He has won 3 in a row, and they're not bad wins for JDS since that loss to Stipe.
Yeah.
The Ivanov win to Ivasa, and I don't know, I just kind of hated on Derek Lewis, but that's not a terrible win at heavyweight, and so I don't know, I wouldn't hate it. He's fought consistently enough recently, and the losses that he has are to guys like Stipe and Overeem and Kane. Like, JDS has to be in that top tier. You can't give him another Tuivasa or Ivanov fight at this point. I just don't think you can do that. And I don't know, maybe Ngannou, that could be kind of interesting. Like, I don't know if that's exactly what they would want to do with Ngannou at this point, but I don't know if I would hate that. But there's some stuff we to do, but it needs to be near the title picture. And to me, a third fight with Stipe makes more sense and is an easier sell than a lot of other things. But he needs probably one more to get into that title picture, because I mean, he's not Brock. He's not going to be drawn like Brock will. Mm-hmm. And I just don't think DC, like, I don't, if you give him a list of names, or Dana gives him a list of names, he probably puts JDS near the bottom of that list, which kind of sucks for JDS because he has looked really, really good, but at the same time, it's fucking heavyweight, and it's hard to really care about that division rankings too much just because there's so little talent around there. But yeah, I'd give him Ngannou or Stipe next if either of those guys are available here coming up.
Yeah, it seems like the path that they want to go with Cormier is to try to make this Lesnar fight happen, and then Cormier rides off into the sunset.
Or John Jones, maybe?
Maybe John Jones. I don't think that's the great way to send Cormier off in the sunset, though. That kind of screws over guys like Stipe, like JDS, who are winning but are going to be passed over for that big money fight for Cormier's retirement. And Lewis, he's you described it perfectly. You kind of know beforehand who the guys he's going to beat are. I mean, the exception to that being that Ngannou fight, probably, but that was, I mean,
it feels more like an aberration.
Happen. Yeah, that didn't happen. And I mean, he's injured all the time too. That doesn't help. This time it was his knee apparently, and he was throwing hard kicks as you mentioned. He like really, they didn't seem to be hampered at all by any knee injuries.
No,
he was throwing head kicks, leg kicks, and they had juice behind them too.
Well, and I don't know, to me the interesting thing was there was some rumors immediately following the fight that he had, I think, tore his meniscus, ACL, and MCL, if I read the right rumor.
Yeah.
And his trainer and coaches since come out and said he had a fairly major knee injury and couldn't train, and his knee kept collapsing. And they knew that on February 12th. So that's a long time to not be training. And I don't know, to me it just kind of said something that it's impossible to tell the difference in a Derek Lewis fight when he's available to train and when he's not. Because he still didn't look terrible. Like, I don't know. He
looked like Derek Lewis, yeah.
Well, and he wasn't getting jabbed up. I expected to see JDS jabbing him up or throwing those body shots. And yeah, he got him with a body shot, but I don't think one that anybody expected. I don't think anybody saw a spinning back kick being the thing to do it. So, Derek Lewis didn't look bad, but he very much looked like normal. And if normal is not training for that long, like, I don't know, that maybe says something. But he still didn't pull out of the fight, which, if you got to get paid, you got to get paid, do what you do. Like, maybe he was going to lose anyways, so going in there fighting with a bum leg doesn't, it's whatever at that point. But at the same time, I don't know. I guess he's not really a guy complaining about it, and he knows it's for the paycheck. But if I'm going to be fighting Junior Dos Santos in the main event of a card, I'm going to want to be 100%. And so, I mean, this card didn't really have a whole lot else. This card takes a huge hit if that's not the main event. Mm-hmm. So I guess kind of good for him. But at the same time, I don't know, it just kind of bumped me out. But I think there's some fun fights for Derek Lewis if he should probably take some time off and get 100%. And those kind of injuries take a lot more time than others. But if he fights again this year, like, would you hate seeing him against like Marcin Tybura or Bagoy Ivanov?
I think he already beat Tybura, but Ivanov makes sense. Yeah. I like that.
I just feel like you got to give him a guy. I mean, he did beat Tybura last February. Yeah, I just think you have to give him a guy kind of there near the bottom of the heavyweight division and let him have fun with something like that to where, he doesn't need to be fighting the Cormiers and the Junior Dos Santoses. I don't think at this point in his career. I think that's kind of past him.
I mean, typically any fight with Lewis is going to be a fun one, so they can really match up with anybody. So yeah, you might as well give him the more winnable fights because he has a big fan base now. I mean, you heard the crowd reaction for Derek Lewis. It was really, really bumping when they were introducing Lewis. So people like him. People definitely like him. So hopefully they'll like to see him win. So Mick Maynard, Sean Shelby, hopefully are matching him up against more opponents on his level rather than the JDSs of the world.
I just wonder how much he has left though. Like I don't know, his motivation has always been kind of an issue for him, and he's got his title shot. I'm not sure how many fights he has left on his contract. I don't think it's that many. And he's definitely not a guy that the UFC is going to want to let get to Bellator or go somewhere else and be there because he's such a big draw for them. He's one of their few guys at heavyweight that is easy to give a fuck about, regardless of whether or not he's won 2 in a row or lost 2 in a row. I just wonder how much more Derek Lewis we're really going to see. Like, I don't know, maybe like a few, like this might be the last year that we see Derek Lewis because between his back and now his knee, like I don't know, he's dealt with some pretty rough injury issues the last few years and also fought a ton throughout all of that. So I don't know, maybe don't be surprised if this is one of the last handful of Derek Lewis fights we end up seeing.
Yeah, at least he's getting paid a ton according to himself, so that's good. In the co-main event of this card, we had Iliju Zaleski dos Santos against Curtis Millender. A very fun matchup, but very one-sided it ended up being. Zaleski ended up using his grappling instead of going toe-to-toe with Millender, and it worked out. He just dominated on the mat, took him down early. Millender tried to get up and got taken down again, and then right into that was a rear naked choke. 7 straight wins for Dos Santos, and he looks to be gunning for a ranked opponent up next.
Yeah, he better. Like, I don't know, that's 7 in a row in the UFC at 170, which might be a little stagnant right now, but like I don't know, anytime you're doing that in a division of the UFC, you're doing something right. And it's not like he's beaten nobodies. Like he's beaten Omari Akhmedov and Max Griffin and Sean Strickland and Lyman Good. Like those are good wins. And some like the last 3 fights in particular, spinning wheel kick knockout of Sean Strickland last May, the flying knee last September. Like I don't know, he's really finding his stride, and that's fun. I don't know. I know you don't maybe want to rush him, but getting him on that 237 card in Rio and Brazil might be kind of fun. But at the same time, when you're on a run like this, maybe it's not worth the risk. I don't know. He's definitely a fresh face into 170 that we've kind of needed, which I think they have him at 14 in the rankings now, and I definitely think that division it needs somebody like this, and I'm excited to see where he goes. And hopefully, they give him maybe the loser of Till Masvidal. I think that might be kind of interesting. Okay. Neil Magny's out there, even though I know that Magny and Chiesa have had some back and forth, and I think there was another 170 guy that called out Magny recently. So, and also the Gunnar Nelson Leon Edwards fight, maybe the loser or winner of that. Like, there's definitely a lot of interesting options for a guy like that at welterweight. But it's time to be giving him, ranked opponents only until further notice because he's on a great run and he was really exciting. I think that was kind of a fight that a lot of inside MMA people were excited about, and it kind of sucked for Millender, but to see a guy like that continue a run like that is always impressive. So good for him. Do something to get a little more marketable. Like I don't know what you do. He's doing everything right in the octagon, but it's kind of crazy that a guy like that is sneaking under the radar at this point.
Yeah, it kind of didn't get on the right foot when he entered the UFC. He lost the split decision to Nicholas Dalby, and then from there he was just on like the prelims of every card and like just quietly winning. Oh, there's that guy again. He just won another fight. There's that Dos Santos guy. But now he gets that co-main event spot and he makes a big statement with the first round submission. Against another great guy like Millender. I love the matchmaking too. You have 2 guys who are looking really good in the welterweight division, and are looking to make that next step into the upper levels, and they put him in a co-main event too. So it had a high stakes, and the guy with the 6-fight win streak won. So you typically don't want to see prospects matched up with each other, but when they're both on the brink, like on the edge of those rankings, I like that too. I like having those guys fight each other, and having it put in a high profile spot like this made it even better in my mind.
Well, and even coming off of a loss, like I don't know if any of those guys we just named for Dos Santos, Millender wouldn't look weird across the octagon from him either. He's got a win over Thiago Alves. He has a win over Max Griffin. Like I think he kind of got dominated and it was a quick fight and Dos Santos looked really good. But this is hardly the end for Millender. His UFC run has a lot more to it, and definitely more of a setback than any sort of like career crushing loss. So he'll definitely get another shot in there sooner rather than later as well. I wouldn't be surprised if he fought like sometime in the summer, and maybe doesn't get a ranked opponent, but maybe he does by the end of the year. And this is seen as kind of a maybe like how we kind of look back on Ngannou Blades, that first fight, where maybe we'll see these guys in a couple of years as both top 10 5 guys at welterweight.
Good comparison, yeah. And Millender said he does want to take the summer off, so now he's got to do that with a little less money in his pocket, though.
Yeah.
And then you can check out the scrums and the media day, all that good content on Cageside Press's YouTube channel. We had Mike Strauss there in person getting all the content. So that's Cageside Press on YouTube. And one of the best fights on the card, possibly the best fight on the card. I mean, the main event got fight of the night, but this one, Nico Price and Tim Means, might be the people's fight of the night. Tim Means was looking great. It was looking like prime Tim Means. His combinations were fantastic, just piecing up Nico Price. But then Price caught on to Tim Means not quite moving his head a lot when he was hitting those combinations, and he just crushed him with a huge hook that caused Means to fall over, and his knee got messed up, his ankle got messed up, everything got all messed up, and a clean knockout for Nico Price. So it looked like Tim Means was going to have an excellent performance under his belt against a really good guy like Nico Price, and then one punch changed that all, and that's why we love the sport. That's why we watch the sport. It could change at any moment. So good performance by Means, but an even better win for Nico Price.
Yeah, I fucking love Nico Price. Nico Price is awesome. That was so much fun. Definitely the moment of the card for me. The moment at which I was most excited. I really like Nico Price. His UFC career has been so much fucking fun. Like he has been nothing but excitement. He had that bullshit win over Alex Morono overturned in Houston for marijuana, which gets it's always easy to root for guys that get shafted by dumb rules like that. He had the fight with Luque, which you and I was fun for us, and was also a pretty fun fight overall. Like Luque's hard to hate on. He's got a win over Joe Ban, some fun knockouts, even a submission, and his most recent loss was to a guy that I don't think we'll be seeing in the UFC for a while, Abdul Razak Al Hassan, who has his own legal issues. So I don't know. It was fun. Obviously not the best performance from Nico, because he was getting dotted up pretty bad.
Getting lit up, yeah.
Yeah, like Tim Means' striking looked really, really good, and it sucks. It kind of, obviously a different story and how it went, but it kind of reminded me of Austin Arnett's performance that we talked about, where he looked really good and his striking looked good, and it looked like I don't know, Tim, like you could tell that he was seeing things right and was like feeling confident, but he just lost it for that one moment, and that's all it took. And I don't know, it was, to me, that was the moment of the night, and super happy for Nico. It's always fun to see him win and see him getting those matchups at welterweight. I wouldn't mind another ranked performance or ranked fighter for him, or maybe give him Millender, Nico Price, Curtis Millender. That's a fun fight. I don't know, there's a lot of stuff to do at welterweight, but I just thought that was fucking awesome. I love Nico, and I was happy to see him, especially with how the fight started. I was happy to see him pull it out, especially in that fashion. And it also sucks for Tim Means. Yeah, you do the crow cop and fuck up your ankle on something like that. Like, that's, you go to sleep and then you wake up and what the fuck's wrong with my foot? Like, I don't like that picture too was also fucking disgusting. But so feel bad for him, but I'd rather feel bad for him and be happy for Nico if I had to have my way about it.
But you can inject Nico Price versus Curtis Millender right into my veins. That's a great fight, and I want that to happen. as soon as possible. That's awesome. Others on the card, we had Blagoy Ivanov. He earned a unanimous decision against Ben Rothwell. Some controversy, people thought that Rothwell won. I believe that Ivanov won the last 2 rounds, giving him a 29-28, and I believe you agree.
Yeah, I do. I just thought his striking, like, how are you that? I guess it's heavyweight, but like, the fact that he was able to control the range fairly well against a guy like Rothwell just kind of said everything about the fight to me. Like his jab looked good. Yeah, he definitely took some shots. It was kind of a tough. It's a fun heavyweight fight, but one that at a certain point like neither guy is gonna finish the other one unless it's like out of exhaustion or something like that. But I was still impressed with Ivanov and thought it was the right call. Yeah, I saw there was a little controversy, but I thought his ability to strike kind of consistently and control the range in the way that he did, I thought that won him the fight.
Yeah, then once that fight started, I realized, I definitely did not miss seeing Ben Rothwell fight.
Yeah, not someone where it says the heavyweight division needs more of this.
Yeah, the boogeyman stance. I completely forgot that he started going to that weird straight forward stance where he had his arms out. It's weird, but it worked for a little bit where he was beating guys like Barnett and Alistair Overeem. Yeah, that weird run that he had. But a good win for Ivanov either way. We also had Beneil Dariush. He was getting beat up, kind of similar to the Tim Means and Nico Price fight, where Dober was looking like an animal in this fight, but then Dariush, he's just simply a much better grappler. It doesn't get much better as far as grappling goes in that division than Beneil Dariush. So he got Dober down and eventually got a nasty triangle armbar on him and got the tap as Dober was trying to pull away, standing up. So you don't typically see someone tap when they're standing up and the guy's hanging onto an armbar, but that's what happened here. Dober tried to crank away, but it ended up forcing a tap. So great submission by Beneil Dariush, a great win, and kind of the same thing that we saw from Nico Price and Tim Means.
Yeah, I was going to say it was very similar because it's easy to watch that fight and come away with it more impressed by Drew Dober. Like, I wasn't sure that Dober... Like, I don't know, Dariush is just a guy who's been in there with so much talent and has been around for so long and is definitely a known commodity that it didn't seem like a test that Drew Dober was going to be able to pass, in my opinion. Like, he definitely had a chance, but if Dariush on his best day versus Dober on his best day, I think everybody thinks Dariush takes that win. But Dober looked really good. He got a little maybe overconfident with the ground game and made a pretty dumb mistake by going back in for it after getting up, and Dariush made him pay. And the way Dariush ended up getting that submission was super impressive too. Just it feels like when you're watching it, because sometimes you can watch grappling and it's kind of easy for people like us who haven't done any of it to follow what's happening. Where he moved into half guard and now he's into side control and now he's controlling the wrist, and like it's easy to follow. I feel like watching Dariush is kind of like trying to watch it on fast forward. Like, he's always doing something where you think you're paying attention to it, and then all of a sudden he's in a different spot, and you go, wait, how did he do that? How did he end up here? Like, what made him do that? And it was really impressive anytime you get to see that. But it was hard, not to come away a little more impressed with Drew Dober like it was with Tim Means and the Nico Price fight. Yeah,
it was a great win for Dariush. Same thing I said before, but a great performance by Drew Dober. One more to touch on. Your Northwest guy, Julian DeRosa, he lost to the debuting Grant Dawson. Got wrestled quite a bit by Dawson.
Yeah, and he didn't look bad off of his back, but anytime you're fighting off your back and you're not really doing a lot of offense, like, that's just not going to be a good way to fight. I was bummed. It's easy. I always rooting for the Northwest guys on these cards, and it was fun to see him out there. And he looked okay for parts on the feet, but he just couldn't keep it up there. And once it got on the ground, he was just kind of like, it never looked like he was going to get finished. Like, he never was in a ton of trouble, but you just can't be fighting off your back for that long and expect to win a fight like that. So definitely a bummer for Arosa, but hopefully his UFC run, his second UFC run here, has some more to it, because I definitely want to see him fight again here before the end of the year.
So overall, a solid card for UFC Wichita, ended very strongly with Price, Means, Zaleski, Millender, and then JDS Lewis had a very strong ending, and overall, not a bad night of fights from Kansas. Now we move on to news articles and stuff like that. First off, Conor McGregor, he's been arrested in Miami, and it was for smashing a fan's phone. He was leaving a club, I believe.
I thought it was the hotel.
A hotel or something like that. Yeah, a place of business. And he was approached by a fan to take a picture, and McGregor took his phone, threw it on the ground, smashed it with his feet, and I believe threw it too. Like, destroyed the phone, basically. And he has been charged with strong-armed robbery and criminal mischief. So, I don't know what to say.
I love it. I don't know, because this is the one time where Conor does something fucking stupid, and it's so easy to say, "Oh, I kind of get that." Like, as someone who's never had to deal with random people taking pictures of me on a constant basis, it's very easy. I get annoyed with like not that bad of things. I would get beyond annoyed if I were him having to deal with that on a constant basis. And yeah, obviously he shouldn't have done it, and he should have handled it differently, and that's all. Like, I'm not saying it's okay, but I can totally see how I it's amazing it took him this long to have something like this happen, and it hasn't happened before. And like, I don't know, realistically, nobody got hurt. It's not like the Dolly incident where, you know, people like Rose, like the way it impacted people like Rose and Kies not being able to be on the card, and just kind of the way that impacted everything. And obviously some of the other rumors that have been going around about Conor McGregor's legal issues abroad. Like, there's a lot worse stuff out there than this, and obviously it doesn't seem like this will impact a whole lot. But just a bit, he stays in the news. He stays getting out there even when he's not fighting.
That's true.
Like, I don't know. Like, it's something, I guess. I think the next step for him, like whatever happens, is going to be very interesting. Whether it's Habib again or whatever. Lightweight is such a clusterfuck right now that it's hard to predict, especially what somebody like Conor will do. Like, if I had my way, I would just do Conor Nate probably like 3 more times, just because it's the fucking best. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure where he goes from here. Hopefully this doesn't have much of an impact. This shouldn't be that big of a deal. Like, obviously he shouldn't do it anymore. There should be some form of punishment, because you can't just fucking do that, even if you're Conor McGregor. But at the same time, let's not get too worked up about this. There's plenty of other stuff with Conor to get worked up about and dislike. This probably shouldn't make the list.
Yeah, that was kind of the consensus reaction was, yeah, I kind of get that. like, yeah, he it's part of the fame, I guess. It's part of the fame side, and he reaches beyond the reaches of MMA, of course. So not too surprising that people are running up to him. He's going to get recognized easily, and yeah, you just gotta keep it cool.
Are you a Super Callow fan on Twitter?
Yeah, I've heard of him. Yeah.
So he's the greatest MMA Twitter follow of all time. He's the absolute best, and he made a really good point. He's not smashed like thousands of fans' phones, so realistically, he's in the good. Like, he's saved a bunch of phones by not doing this thousands of times in the past. So, like, if one guy getting his phone smashed means thousands of others don't, I think we're all winners in that situation. So yeah, whenever you need good MMA analysis, go to Super Callow. He's got the real knowledge. He looks beyond just the broad picture. He gets real in depth with it. So yeah, I like that take on this entire situation.
So, more Conor news that doesn't have to do with cell phones. Donald Cerrone says their fight is not happening right now because Conor is insistent on only being in the main event, and the UFC is insistent on having belts in the main event only. So they can't really make this fight happen, and I mean, it's not too surprising of a situation.
Yeah, like, no shit, Cowboy. Like, he's Conor fucking McGregor. Like, he could fight a box of cereal and it should be the main event. Like, it doesn't... Like, I don't know what Cowboy was thinking, that Conor A-side McGregor would consider ever being under under two other guys fighting. Like I just don't like. Yeah, that's probably part of the reason why. But at the same time, like that's a roadblock that the UFC, if they really wanted to, could get around easily. Nobody would bat an eye at them headlining a pay-per-view, or look at Conor Cowboy headlining a pay-per-view, not having a belt on it, and nobody would wonder why that was the main event, even if there was like at 238 or something like that. If they did that and they did the Shevchenko eye fight underneath that with the belt, nobody would think it was weird that Conor Cowboy was in the main event. So realistically, that might be what the UFC in Dana told Cowboy. Like, oh yeah, he won't do it. He won't this. He won't that. And I could see Conor also not being interested in that fight because it's a fun fight, but it's not that big of a draw. There's definitely better options for Conor out there. This sounds to me, and he could not want to do it, but this sounds like Cowboy just repeating what the company told him, and Cowboy like said it out loud for the first time or something. Like he got told that and said, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. Fuck Conor," and then he said it out loud, and it's like, "Well, wait, no, that makes complete sense." Like, no, duh. Like the fact that was used to convince you, or like make you seem like it wasn't the UFC's fault. Like, I don't know. That's on you. The UFC could very easily do that, and it wouldn't be weird. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, it's just more nonsense onto a nonsense fight that shouldn't even be fucking discussed anyways. And the fact that it ends up with Cowboy being surprised that Conor wouldn't be in the main event just kind of indicates what kind of fight it was in the fucking first place.
Yeah, I don't know why they just love their titles, man. The interim belts and everything. It wasn't too long ago where we could have pay-per-view main events without belts. It doesn't have to have a belt all the time. But I guess nowadays, if you have like a card that... Conor McGregor's an exception to the rule, though.
Yeah,
he
I was going to say,
exception to the rule.
Tell me if there isn't one fighter who's an exception to that. It's GSP could have done the same thing if he during his comeback. He just wanted a belt. Conor might be in the same boat, but like he's not getting a shot at 145 or 155, and I don't think any of us want to see Usman wrestle him for 4 minutes or however fucking long it would take Usman to pound him out. So, like, he's absolutely an exception to the rule, and the UFC really wanted to do it. They absolutely could. It's a dumb excuse they told Cowboy that Cowboy, apparently took the bait on.
All right, well, UFC 235, the pay-per-view did solid numbers. It was 235 did 520,000 to 650,000. That's an early estimate, and that's really not bad in this day and age. And of the 5 biggest pay-per-views since 2017, 3 of them feature Jon Jones, and I know that he's not pulling in those Conor McGregor numbers or GSP numbers, but you got to take those 700K pay-per-views. That's more than enough to, I don't want to say turn a profit because we don't know the UFC's financials, but make a good bit of money off of the Jon Jones name on the pay-per-view night. So you definitely rather have that than those little 200K pay-per-views that they have sometimes. And to have this title fight that felt thrown together with Anthony Smith and to have it do that great of numbers, that ain't bad.
No, and then like you say, like Jon Jones is a draw, and you go like, yeah, no shit, like that's not breaking news to anybody. But in a post Ronda, semi post Conor, post GSP world, he is so vital. Post Cyborg even, because Cyborg I feel like was kind of that person for them. Like she's obviously not pulling the same numbers as Jones, but she was someone that they could at least count on to put them in a different level, maybe in like the 300,000 to 400,000, 500,000, something like that. But to me, it was just striking that of the five biggest since 2017, 3 of them are Jon Jones, and 2 of them come in the last 4 months. Like that's the fact that he still has that kind of power, and it's hard to tell. I feel like for me, as or for people like us who are inside the MMA bubble, it's hard to tell what kind of reach some of these people have. Like, oh yeah, you want to join Jacek? She's a huge star. You could say her name to 1,000 people on the street, and none of them would have a fucking clue. So, it just kind of speaks to how big Jon Jones still is, and how much more they could get out of him. Like, who knows how much more he still has left in the tank. But it's just so important right now with them kind of without their stable of stars. That Diaz is also being some people they could generally probably go to now and get a decent draw from that are just not interested. He's so important to the company, and the idea of him fighting 3 or 4 times a year for them and being able to pull 500 to 750,000 buys depending on who his opponent is, that's huge for them. I think they are going to lean into him a little bit more as this year goes on, and I'm definitely not mad about it. If he can do that in a division like that, the UFC is not going to be mad about it either. But yeah, that was just an interesting stat that I saw once the pay-per-view came out, because I was very interested to see what it would do. I knew it wouldn't do 700 like 232 did, but if it can do over 600 or in that range, that's not bad at all.
Yeah, definitely can't be mad at that. At the end of the day, I mean, he's as talented as it gets of all time, in my opinion. So he obviously he does the kind of thing where he stays in the news for the wrong reasons, typically. But we know how great he is. People know how great he is, and he's relevant. And he's kind of like a once in a lifetime kind of fighter. You don't really get 2 John Joneses. There's only going to be one that can do the things that he does. So he's definitely special, and to see the numbers back that up is a good thing, because you don't want a guy like Jones being hidden from the world.
Well, and I think
in the MMA world,
I think he's especially valuable in that division at light heavyweight, because
yes.
like it sucks so bad, and heavyweight also sucks so bad. But there's still some fairly interesting options, whether it's DC or Brock. Like he could do all that stuff at heavyweight still. Like there's potentially there's still so much more they could do with him. Like it's crazy that a guy who has as much experience he has and has done as much as he has still has so many interesting options for him. And depending on how some of the young guys come up in like heavyweight, I don't know. Heavyweight just seems like a fucking nightmare right now. But There's a couple names at light heavyweight that are kind of interesting that could make them move up and give him more to do over the next few years. But I think that's a big part of it, is the fact that it's at weight classes where they need somebody like that to be interesting, because there's enough talent at places like featherweight and lightweight and bantamweight to keep us interested for a while. Light heavyweight or heavyweight, it's not going to take a whole lot for those to become just unwatchable divisions, as they're already kind of close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jones really helped bridge that, because that light heavyweight was really the strongest division in the UFC. Not, I would say around 8 years ago, it had like Forrest Griffin, Rashad Evans, Chuck Liddell, Shogun, all those. It had like the who's who in the UFC, and then all those guys retired, and here we got John Jones. I mean, he beat a couple of those guys by the end of their journeys, but now we have John Jones to carry the mantle and still keep the light heavyweight relevant after it was such a great division. Rampage Jackson, I just said Rashad's name too. So there was plenty of guys at light heavyweight, and then it just kind of fell apart. But now we got John Jones dominating it. So when you have there's also that kind of thing that happens when you have a dominant champion like John Jones, where it kind of makes the rest of the division look bad. I mean, that's kind of what happened at flyweight. Because flyweight's not bad. There's a lot of talent at flyweight, but the thing is, Demetrius Johnson was so much better than everyone else. It kind of made everything look bad. But I don't think that's the case for John Jones. I just don't think that light heavyweight's deep at all.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, he still has wins over the good guys. So like, it's John doesn't have to deal with the DJ version of, well, he fought in a crap division. Like, you never hear that when talking about John. And part of it is the way he finishes guys. Part of it is because it's so much easier to talk about the extracurricular stuff that John's had to deal with as a reason to knock him for stuff rather than his performances. But also just because they're bigger and the risk is more. I think it's easier to say that fighting a guy like Anthony Smith is tougher than fighting I don't know, Tim Elliott or something like that. If you're looking for like risk, even though that Tim Elliott DJ fight was super fun, it's a weird way. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, but yeah, it's also, there's no taking away anything from John Jones, especially when we all tune in. Like it's easy to say you hate him or that he's a fuck up or this or that or he's boring, but when everybody's watching, I don't know. That's kind of the ultimate barometer.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so we'll move on to the fights that have been announced this past week. We had Alexander Gustafsson versus Anthony Smith. That's going to be in June in Stockholm. So Gustafsson's home. And I like this fight a lot. Smith is an aggressive striker, and Gustafsson can match that with his movement and his constant jab. So let's see what form of Gus we get here, and if we get that prime Gus, that the one that jabbed up Glover Teixeira, it's gonna be a long night at the office for Anthony Smith.
I think this is a bad idea. I hate it. Like, I don't. It's an interesting fight for sure, and it's a couple of the most, like, you get the two guys that just last fought for the title against John Jones fighting against each other. That's not terrible, but Anthony Smith's interview on the Ariel MMA ESPN Helwani show, it was just a bummer. And obviously, it's less than 2 weeks since he lost the title and kind of just got beat up for 25 minutes and had to deal with all the drama of the knee to the downed opponent and all that shit. So obviously, like, it makes sense that he'd be bummed. But he doesn't want this. Like, he said he wanted to take a year off and do this and do that, and he put a lot of it on, I'll be more excited for it in a few weeks when I have this out of my system. And I feel like that's something that's a lot easier to say than do. And maybe, like, I don't know Anthony Smith at all. I've also never been in that kind of a situation, so maybe I'm just a fucking idiot. But I just don't see, like, obviously another, like, kind of the same thing with Derek Lewis. It's another paycheck, and if you knock out Gustafsson in the first or second round, you're that much closer to getting your rematch that he wants. But I just don't see this going well for him. And then all of a sudden you go from guy that was riding a winning streak and fighting John for the title and an illegal knee away from being the champ to 2 losses before the summer starts. Like, and then he wants to take the rest of the year off regardless of how it goes. If Anthony Smith's coming back in 2020 coming off of back-to-back losses, like, he's going to be around the bottom of the top 10 at light heavyweight with that much time off. With, I don't know, shit moves around and everything like that. So I don't know. I just don't like it. And it's an interesting fight for sure. And good on him for wanting to get back in there. But I'm kind of worried for Anthony Smith in this one.
It could mean that was offered a little bit more money for this to take this fight. I mean,
yeah. Well, and like I said, I hope that Dana maybe gave him a little something for handling things the way he did, but at the same time, that doesn't exactly sound like it sounds like old school UFC rather than the way things are run now. And if instead of offering him a check under the table or a raise or something like that, they said, "You want to go get fucked up by Gus in 3.5 months?" Like, I don't know if that's the best way to pat him on the back for something like that.
Well, we have a new headliner for UFC Fort Lauderdale, UFC Sunrise, UFC Miami. One of those things. I don't know what the official name is. It's got a ton of names. That's on April 27th. It's an ESPN card. It's Yoel Romero versus Jacare Souza Part 2. Love this fight, but it means we don't get the juicy fight of Romero versus Bohachinia. And Romero said on the MMA Hour show, Minute, ESPN, Ariel Helwani, he said that Costa was USADa'd. And then Costa's manager came out and said, "Nah, that didn't happen. He's lying." And then Romero then called Helwani after the show and said, "I didn't mean it. I made a mistake. It's not confirmed that he got USADa'd." So, weird situation. We don't know what's going on with Paulo Costa, but what we do know is that Romero is fighting Jacare.
Yeah, which is fun. Like, I don't know, if we're not going to get Romero Bohachinia, like, I don't hate it, and I'm a Jacare homer for sure. Also, just, Romero was such a fucking shithead. Like, he knew exactly what he was doing when he was saying that. Like, he's so much smarter and wilier than he thinks. Like, that, there was a Rogan episode with him, and they had Joey Diaz on there kind of helping him.
That was amazing.
It was so good. And it taught me that Romero's much more of a shithead than, like, we obviously already knew with his own stuff with steroids and always having, like, the water on him and other shit like that. Like, he's just kind of one of those guys. But as soon as I heard him say that on the show, it was like, you don't know shit. Like, he's just trying to stir it up, which, like, I don't know, whatever. If anybody can do that, it's fucking him. But yeah, no, I don't hate the fight. It got me excited initially, and it was one of those fights that I would not have said I wanted to see again. Like, yeah, they went to a split decision the first time, and it was maybe didn't go Yoel's way, but I only see this fight going one way, and it's with Yoel Romero. Like, Jacare hasn't looked bad since that loss to Whitaker. He knocked the shit out of Derek Brunson in the first fight back, but then lost a split decision to Gastelum, and then KO'd Weidman, which was awesome. But I just don't. I think that Jacare is at a point in his career where getting matched up with someone like Romero is probably not the best thing. But if he can win, like, I don't know, he could be back in that title picture sooner rather than later. But it should be a fun fight regardless. Yeah, no matter where it ends up eventually fucking taking place. But if we're not going to get Romero Borrachinha, I'm okay with Romero Jacare too, for sure.
Yeah, it just brings me back to when they fought the first time, when they were both at the top of their game, and it was one of those true number one contender fights where we had like the best in the world that didn't have a belt fighting each other, and that was the co-main event, or actually it was the third fight on the main card of the card where Aldo was knocked out by McGregor.
Yeah.
And we had the Romero spinning back fist of Doom in the first round, and then it was just a kind of iffy fight from then on that Romero got the nod in. So I'll see it again though. We've seen Romero just still kill it, and of course Jacare, you said he's had a little bit of struggles. He definitely did not look at the top of his game against Chris Weidman, but ended up getting the knockout at the end. But that doesn't work against Yoel Romero. You can't really turn the jets on late and expect to beat Romero, because that's what he does. He's gonna bring you his best stuff in those late rounds.
Well, and it's not like there's a whole lot else to fucking do at middleweight. Like,
I like this.
Whitaker, yeah, like Whitaker's out. Adesanya Gastelum are fighting.
Yep.
They've both fought Weidman relatively recently. Paulo Costa's out, and Luke Rockhold is going up to light heavyweight.
MIA.
Well, apparently he's having, was it like knee surgery, or he's having some sort of surgery, and then the plan is for him to go to light heavyweight afterwards. So yeah, like why the hell not at this point with these two?
Now we get to the depressing part of this episode, UFC 237.
And we already talked about Derek Lewis fighting. This is the depressing part.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that this is happening so soon. It's BJ Penn versus Clay Guida, which is a headliner back in like 2008, but it's 2019, so it wasn't too long ago that Penn had his knee ripped apart by Ryan Hall, and he's stepping back in to fight Guida at 237. Man, Guida's won 2 of his last 3.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is he's actually looked decent. Like, he's looked objectively like good, even, I guess. Can you tell me the last person BJ Penn defeated off the top of your head?
It's Matt Hughes, UFC 123. I'm not looking at it, but no, I remember.
Yeah, that's almost a fucking decade ago. Like, do we need this? Who wants this? Who is doing this? Like, whose idea is this? Because as much as we hate on Bellator and other promotions like for having fights like this, I don't know. Maybe I'm just a weird UFC homer. I don't need this in my UFC, man. Like, if this,
nobody needs BJ Penn, yeah.
No, well, and like, even if it was happening in Bellator, you know that they wouldn't be putting up a guy that's won 2 out of his last 3. That's for sure. Like, they at least have no shame in their ability to just, be nice to one of the fighters or give him a matchup that isn't gonna mess him up. Like, I don't know what we're here for. And the thing about it is, best case scenario, BJ goes out there and looks amazing and knocks Clay Guida out in the first couple minutes.
That's always the best case scenario.
Okay, but like, then who gives a fuck? Then BJ Penn in 2019 beat Clay Guida, and then what? He fights again?
Retire, maybe?
Yeah, no, but if he doesn't retire after losing 1,000 fights in a row, getting heel hooked by Ryan Hall and beat by Dennis Seaver, like, what's a loss to Clay Guida looks better than both of those. Like, we don't need him getting any ideas that he should keep going, and so that means we got to root for him to get his ass whipped. Like, that's where we're at, because eventually he needs to stop. Like, I don't know. I'm not excited about it. I'm gonna watch it. It's gonna be sad, and it'll probably happen again if the last couple of years are any indicator, because apparently the UFC is just going to keep paying him to fight, and he's going to keep saying yes.
I don't know what his objective is, but yeah, he had his winnable fight. He couldn't beat Dennis Seaver, man.
Yeah.
And that
2017 Dennis Seaver also.
Yeah, like now he's got to fight guys like Ryan Hall who can win, and Clay Guida, who not too long ago beat Joe Lozon and Eric Koch, who are better fighters than BJ Penn at this point.
Yeah. Eric Koch is a better fighter than BJ Penn. Kill me.
Imagine saying that. Yeah. That's why. That's it. I don't want to talk about BJ Penn anymore, man. UFC 238 announced 3 fights officially. Main event is Valentina Shevchenko versus Jessica Ai for the flyweight title. Caitlin Chukagian versus Joanne Calderwood. That could possibly be a top contender bout in the flyweight division. And then Tatiana Suarez versus Nina Ansaroff, which should, in all intents and purposes, be a top contender bout in the strawweight division. So, a couple of really important bouts on the women's side of the UFC. So what do you think? This is a nice start for this Chicago card.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I think you're right in your evaluation of all of those. Shevchenko, I don't know. It is what it is. It's a young division. Shevchenko's probably going to do her thing and decision her with a 50-44 or something like that. Like, I definitely has a chance, but I just think this is Shevchenko's division for a while until there's a little more depth to it. But I absolutely think Chukagian, Calderwood, and Suarez Ansaroff are title. I think they're both absolutely number one contender fights, regardless of who wins between Shevchenko and I. I guess if it's controversial or close, we could potentially see a rematch, and that might delay it, especially if I wins. So, I don't know. There's that. But I think if Ansaroff can beat Tatiana Suarez, I don't know how you keep her
awesome
away.
Would that be?
I don't know how you keep her away. If you can beat Claudia Gadelha and Tatiana Suarez, you absolutely deserve a shot at the champ at 115. And if Suarez wins, she's so easy to slot in there. And the thing is, like, we've seen all of the different machinations of Karolina Kowalkiewicz and Claudia Gadelha and Rose Namajunas and Jessica Andrade. Like, it's been awesome, and it's been a really fun last couple of years. But it's time for somebody new to challenge for the belt, whether it's Ansaroff or Suarez. So regardless of who wins between Rose and Jessica Andrade, I think the winner of that needs it. So they might not be the most exciting fights on paper, and they might be a little one-sided, especially the Shevchenko-I one and maybe the Suarez-Ansaroff in terms of like odds or everything. But they're important fights regardless. So it makes cards like that feel that much more important when the sell is that easy. Hey, you might not care about this fight right now, but whoever wins this is going to be fighting for the title next. So pay attention, kind of a thing. So yeah, I like it a lot. It's shaping up to be a fun card.
Yeah, and I mean, that split decision goes the other way. You could have Jessica Ai versus Calderwood, and then Chukagian versus Shevchenko. So
yeah,
those are definitely good fights to set up. And Calderwood looked amazing against Ariane Lipski, and that was a fight where people were expecting Lipski to, get this. Hey, I'm in the UFC now, pay attention to me, but Calderwood diced her up. It was a really good performance by Calderwood, kind of back to what she was expected to be in the UFC, and now she's fighting at her natural weight class. She's 3-0 in the UFC at flyweight, so now she's got a really tough test in Caitlin Chukagian, who's like a mini Holly Holm, so we'll see how that fight goes. Now we got PFL announcing their 8-woman lightweight tournament bracket. It's been announced. That took a little bit to get out, but this is expected to be a bunch of soda cans and Kayla Harrison, but they got Sarah Kaufman in there, which is interesting. It's been a while since Kaufman fought in the UFC. She's done some good work in Invicta, and now she gets a shot at PFL. So she's in there. She's a bantamweight, but she's going to go against Kayla Harrison, who doesn't have a lot of experience in MMA, but is expected to run through this tournament. But I definitely like the presence of Sarah Kaufman, though. That makes things interesting. More interesting than Harrison versus the rest of that bracket minus Sarah Kaufman. And I mean, there is also Larissa Pacheco, who had a couple UFC fights in her career, but she's not as renowned as Sarah Kaufman is, or accomplished as Kaufman is. So hopefully they set it up where Kaufman and Harrison are on opposite sides of the bracket, so that could be the the championship fight, because I don't want to see them meet each other before the belt is on the line. But this is definitely a good sign that it's not just a bunch of tomato cans and Kayla Harrison.
Yeah, I mean, it's still definitely Kayla Harrison versus the field. Like, that's the bet that you're taking in this. But that field is a lot more interesting when you have Sarah Kaufman in there, someone who has that much experience and has fought on the big stage, has fought in those big moments, has won, has fought for belts in multiple promotions and even won one. But at the same time, yeah, she's a bantamweight fighting at lightweight, and that generally doesn't go well. So I think it was also interesting when she was on the Hawani show. She mentioned that the setup is a little different for them since they only have 8. So they're going to do, each woman gets 2 regular season fights, and then the top 4 from that 8, based on how they do their point structure, the top 4 from that 8 will go to the tournament. So they could very easily schedule Sarah Kaufman and Kayla Harrison away from each other those first 2 fights, and then whatever happens in the semifinals and the finals. You can't really do much more, but I think that's pretty much a given. So I think that was cool. That's gives them a little more control over kind of a goofy format, but it adds a lot more, maybe not a lot more interest to it, but it definitely adds more interest to the tournament overall than it would be just Kayla Harrison and a bunch of other people. Sarah Kaufman definitely gives a little more validity to it, legitimacy to it, so good for them. Good for Invicta. Shannon Knapp is just maybe the most fighter-friendly promoter on the planet and says, go do what you got to do, and I don't think I've ever heard anyone say a negative thing about her, so good on her for looking out for Sarah Kaufman and let her go challenge herself with something like this. But yeah, I'm definitely especially when you're doing your first ever lightweight tournament, it's always good to have as much legitimacy as possible, and Kaufman definitely brings that.
Yeah, and with that being with Sarah Kaufman being a part of that, I'm excited to see what the rest of their brackets hold, because I expect some bigger names.
Yeah.
This season now that we know that the $1 million prize is legitimate. Expect to attract some solid competition to these PFL tournaments, and I believe they're announcing the rest of the roster later this month and early next month, I believe. So keep an eye out for that. But this weekend we'll be keeping an eye on UFC London. That's on ESPN. I believe it's an ESPN Plus card. I don't think it's on ESPN.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's ESPN Plus at 4. ESPN Plus at 1. So
I thought it was on ESPN.
I think the next ESPN card is Philadelphia. That's the next week. We have prelim start at 1. Main card starts at 4. That's Eastern time. Main event is Darren Till versus Jorge Masvidal. Darren Till coming off the title shot that went wrong. He really did not impress against Tyron Woodley at all. Got dominated in that fight. And this fight has some implications where the winner could end up fighting Ben Askren, because Askren wants to fight whoever's victorious on Saturday, and hopefully for that case it's Darren Till. For the build-up of an Askren versus Till fight would be excellent. But Masvidal might be in a position to play spoiler here. He's definitely not an easy fighter to get past.
I think this is going to be the fight where we finally learn something about Darren Till. Like something that we don't already know. Whether it's, I guess we know a little bit about Darren Till. We know he doesn't have a great gas tank. We know he's not that great defensively. But maybe we'll learn a little bit about him on the ground. Because I have a feeling if Masvidal is going to win this fight, he's going to have to pressure Till. He's going to have to back him up. And I think he's going to have to wrestle him. And Masvidal can do that. He's really good. He's very well-rounded, but maybe not super great in any one specific area. Maybe probably wrestling or on the ground. But I think we're going to learn a little bit about Darren Till. And I don't know if it's all going to be good necessarily, but I don't know. For some reason, I'm still picking him to win. I think that the thing about it is that Masvidal is going to have to really come out and put out a performance that I think we'll know very quickly in the first few minutes whether or not Masvidal is going to be able to do the job. Because if it turns into a boring fight, I think that obviously goes a little bit more in Till's advantage if he's able to stay outside and fight his kind of a fight. But I think Masvidal has the tools to make him fight a different kind of fight, and I kind of want to see if he can win a different kind of fight, an ugly fight, because we haven't seen him really do that. It's either been him dominating a guy like Cowboy or something like that, or him gassing
Getting
out.
dominated by
exactly, and
Stephen Thompson or Damian Maia. Yeah.
and so I don't know. I'm hoping we learn something about Darren Till this weekend, because he is a fighter that, kind of a lot like Cody Garbrandt, is just really hard to peg his level right now. And if you're a title contender or in the title picture at 170, you got to be beating Jorge Masvidal. Jorge Masvidal is kind of that perfect barometer, I feel like, at 170, where kind of like Derek Lewis that we mentioned earlier, he always loses to the guys that are really good. And
Yeah.
he generally beats the guys that aren't that good. And right now, I don't know if anyone knows whether Darren Till is really good or not. And I think this will be a really good test. And I'm hoping that Masvidal comes out and challenges him in some of those different ways, because I think that we'll learn a lot either way. And I'm pretty excited for it regardless. I think it should be fun, especially in London. The crowd should be up for it. But
Yeah.
I'm mostly excited or interested to see what we end up learning about Darren Till after this.
And that big size advantage that'll have Darren Till having some trouble cutting to 170 and calling himself a light heavyweight at 170, and you have Jorge Masvidal, who moved up from lightweight and found a lot of success at welterweight. But yeah, he's definitely going to be on the smaller side for this fight, so we'll see how he deals with that. Co-main event is great. A couple of grapplers in Leon Edwards and Gunnar Nelson. Nelson getting the underdog nod, though. It's a fun fight. Edwards is coming off the main event win against Donald Cerrone, while Nelson defeated Alex Oliveira in his comeback after the knockout that he suffered against Santiago Ponzinibbio. I really like the stylistic matchup of this fight. It's two grapplers who get the job done on the feet, but really are there. They're skilled there, but they're not gonna finish fights there. They're gonna get you to the ground where they can finish fights, and that's like, I mean, perfect example. That was when Gunnar Nelson rocked Joe Ban and then choked him out. He got the job done on the feet and then really finished the fight on the ground. So I believe Leon Edwards will get the job done here. I think he's just too tough of a grappler for Nelson to deal with, but he's scrappy. He's really tough to figure out. I mean, Damian Maia had him figured out for those 15 minutes, but not everyone's Damian Maia, and Leon Edwards isn't Damian Maia. So we'll see how this fight goes. It's definitely a great co-main event.
Yeah, I think that all of those things that you said about Gunnar Nelson are correct. He is a goofy matchup, and he's a guy that can battle back, as we saw in the Alex Oliveira fight. And he has some skills on the feet, obviously has skills on the ground. But I just think Leon Edwards is a little bit better everywhere. Like, I don't know, to me, Gunnar Nelson is a guy that is maybe not easy to catch out, but as confusing as he is, I'm not sure that I'm not sure he always fights in the best way. I'm not sure he's always fighting the best fight that he can. And I think Leon Edwards kind of feasts on that. Leon Edwards is just such a smart fighter, and he's well-rounded, and he doesn't overextend himself, and he doesn't beat himself. And I feel like that's kind of something that Gunnar Nelson at this point maybe not relies on, but he needs to take advantage of your mistakes. And I'm not sure Leon Edwards is going to make any mistakes. He's just really smart, and his striking is maybe not underrated, but he definitely has skills there. He's won 6 in a row. He's beat guys like Vicente Luque and Brian Barberina as well, who, like, obviously aren't those aren't incredible wins, but those are really good wins at 170 and guys who fight very differently. He's got a win over Albert Tumanov as well. Like, he can do things. He also went the distance with Kamaru Usman back in the day. Like, I don't know. I feel like his skills translate to a fight like this particularly well. Does that mean he can't get caught and submitted by Gunnar? Absolutely not, because Gunnar Nelson's awesome. But I think that if Leon Edwards fights his fight and fights smart and fights like he has the last couple of years, I think he goes in there and gets the job done. Maybe not the most exciting fight, but I could see a pretty clear, 30-27 or something like that.
Yeah, I'm happy to finally see Leon Edwards getting some recognition in the UFC, because he wins all the time. I think his only UFC loss was against Kamaru Usman, unless I'm forgetting one.
No, that's it. Well, he doesn't look bad like that. I think like it's one thing to win, but like as we mentioned with Derek Lewis, like you can win and still look like shit, and Leon Edwards doesn't do that. Like he goes in there and looks good, and you can see him doing the right things more often than not. And when guys are this talented, that fucking Tim Means Nico Price fight, you can do the right thing for 4 minutes and 45 seconds. All it takes is that one moment where you don't, where it all kind of fucks up. And that Gunnar Nelson is a guy that if you do fuck up for 5 seconds, he can take advantage of it. I just don't see Leon Edwards doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we'll see who takes a step forward at welterweight. And yeah, Leon Edwards is finally arriving. He's getting that push from the UFC that he's needed, because he's been so successful, and now he's got a co-main event spot and coming off a main event. So good for him, and hopefully he gets a job done this weekend for some new blood at welterweight. And I got another light heavyweight fight to talk about. Volkan Oezdemir against Dominic Reyes, a couple of really fun strikers. Reyes trying to enter himself into the 205 title picture, that very thin title picture. And he's the favorite in this fight against the Bootmaster. So, will Volkan Oezdemir snap that losing streak? He's coming off that loss against Anthony Smith and the title shot before that. Or will Dominic Reyes continue his run and be the next big thing at light heavyweight?
I know that historically we're a pro Volkan podcast. That's generally where we align. I just think Dominic Reyes is really good. I'm buying into the hype. He is so talented, and he wouldn't be I wouldn't be this high on a guy like him if he was fighting at lightweight or at welterweight. But this is light heavyweight. Like a guy that's as well rounded as he is and can strike the way he does is going to skyrocket. And I feel like if we're gonna be like rating light heavyweight prospects, give me Dominic Reyes over Johnny Walker any day. Like obviously we have a lot more to learn about Johnny Walker in the future. I just think Dominic Reyes is the real deal and has it all, and it's just about if he can put it together and if he can avoid whatever magic Volkan has in those hands. Because he doesn't want to get into any boxing exchanges with Volkan, I don't think. I think he's going to want to keep it on the outside and maybe control the pace a little bit and try to confuse Volkan. But I really think this is going to be Reyes' coming out party. I mean, he's a surprisingly high favorite, and we haven't seen the best from Volkan recently, and we discussed that not too long ago on the show, I think, when this fight got announced. But, he had kind of a rough year and then, didn't look great in his last fight. So I don't know if the Volkan Express is maybe losing steam. This would be a great way to get it back. I just think that maybe this is just kind of a rough matchup at a bad time for Volkan. I think this might be Reyes' time to take the spotlight a little bit and announce his name into that 205 title picture, and maybe he ends up getting the winner of Gus Anthony Smith later on, or if Anthony Smith doesn't want to fight again, who else is there? Maybe he gets Thiago Santos if John Jones wants to take time off or something. Santos is probably waiting for a title shot, but there will be some interesting options for Reyes after this if he can come away with the win at the top of 205.
I am liking this new wave of like really athletic guys that are coming into 205 because it definitely needs that breath of fresh air, and Dominic Reyes is one of them, and Johnny Walker, as you mentioned. I think I got to agree with you. I mean, we definitely know more about Reyes than Johnny Walker at this moment. I mean, we know what Johnny Walker can do, but we don't know to what extent he can do that. Can he do that for 15 minutes? We don't know that yet, but we know that Reyes can. Well, he's beat a guy like Ovin St. Preux already.
Exactly. I was going to say, like, as much as I love to hate on Ovin's probably, I don't think he's getting finished in the first round against Johnny Walker. I think a guy like Ovin's is able to maybe do some different things and offer some different challenges for a guy like Johnny Walker, and we've seen Dominic Reyes pass that test with relative ease. So I think yeah, like there's still, like you said, plenty of time to find that out about Johnny Walker, but right now I just think Reyes is the real deal.
Yeah, for sure. And the fight that you have an eye on, you wrote an article about it earlier this week. On the prelims, Mark Jacasey versus Joe Duffy, a couple of Brits. It's Mark Jacasey representing England, Duffy representing Ireland. They're both struggling a little bit. Duffy was knocked out by James Vick, and Marcia Casey just has struggled a lot. He's lost 3 straight, and he's on the brink of, seeing himself on the outside looking in from the UFC as a whole. It seems he was the next big thing when he signed with the UFC, and he was knocking at everybody, and then just really slowed down. And now he got a really good stylistic matchup, 2 very good strikers. Duffy has the advantage in the grappling sense. But this is a really important fight, and I mean, you wrote at length about it, so go ahead. What do you think about this fight?
Yeah, it's one of the, obviously I've kind of harped on it in the preview that we've done for this card, but something that I look for is just fights that are important. It's easy if, obviously every fight's important, and it's easy to watch guys, you're trying to not get your ass beat and also make some money. But when there's a little more on the line, it's so much easier to get invested. And these are 2 guys that most UFC fans or MMA fans are fairly familiar with if they've been following for a little while. Both fun to watch when they're on their game, but just haven't been. You mentioned Duffy, the loss to James Vick at 217, which was, I think, a little surprising for everybody. I think that was maybe a fight that people expected Duffy to win. He ended up needing shoulder surgery the February afterward. That put him out for 6 months. Then he was scheduled to fight in December and hurt his rib. And now he's back finally. And they're giving him a guy who is tough. Like, I don't know, DeCasey's lost 3 straight. He also won his first 3 in the UFC. I think he's 25 years old. And his losses, he's not fighting nobodies. He's fighting Dan Hooker and Calvin Kattar. And now, coming off of 3 straight losses, the 25-year-old prospect, the UFC is giving him Joe fucking Duffy. Like,
yeah,
lightweight's no joke. Like, you can't be picky at lightweight. You have to fight who you're going to fight. But there's just so much on the line.
They really hold him to the fire.
Yeah, well, and it's on both sides too. It's one from both sides. You can say, well, damn, you couldn't give Duffy a little bit easier fight on his first fight back. And you say, well, damn, you're going to give DeCasey a vet like Duffy after 3 straight losses. And there's a lot on the line for both guys because a win kind of puts them back into that top 15 ranking territory, or at least in the conversation, maybe with another win later this year, and a loss, taking 15 months off with sandwiched it with losses. That's not a good way to continue your UFC career for Duffy, and obviously 4 straight for DeCasey. That's a nightmare for anybody in the UFC. So just a lot on the line with that one, with 2 fun, interesting strikers, 2 kind of the more interesting guys. I'm a little surprised that it's on the prelims ahead of some of the other, or behind some of the other fights on there. Like, there's other good stuff on the main card. We can get to it now, like the Nathaniel Wood, Jose Alberto Quinones fight. That's a really good fight.
That's good.
Jack Marshman's got an almost really cool sounding last name, so always got to root for him. But to me, and even ahead of it on the prelim card is Arnold Allen Jordan Rinaldi, which is a super fun featherweight fight. But to me, that DeCasey Joe Duffy fight could easily be the co-main, or at least join that group of top 3 fights that we broke down initially. But either way, it'll be fun to watch, and I'm excited for it. And it's definitely one that I have my eye on more so than some of the other ones on the card.
Yeah, we got a who's who of UK MMA on this card. Danny Henry on this card. He's the one that submitted Hakeem Dawodu in his UFC debut, and Tom Breeze coming back. He hasn't fought in a while, so hopefully he steps in the cage this time. Arnold Allen, as you mentioned, one of the brightest prospects in UK MMA. Danny Roberts, always fun, against Claudio Silva, who fought in 2014 and then took 4 years off, came back in 2018 and won against Nordine Taleb.
Normal stuff.
As you do. So he'll try to make it 2 in a row since returning, but he doesn't usually. So tough fight for Danny Roberts on this main card, and Jack Marshman, of course, from Wales. Always fun to watch him fight. So overall, a fun fight, a fun card to watch.
Is there a better name than Mike Grundy? Like a better, worse name?
Mike Grundy.
There's just something about, like, I know we have Mike Grundy, coach of the Oklahoma State Cowboys, but there's something about that R, the Grundy. Like, I don't know. Me and my roommate have been using it as a verb for different things. Like, getting real Grundy. Like, it's just I don't know. It's not the best. So I'm kind of just, I have no idea who he is, what he looks like, anything about him. I kind of just want to see him fight purely for his name.
Well, he's mainly a wrestler, and he's one of Darren Till's main training partners, so he's getting his UFC debut on this card.
That might be kind of a red flag. I don't know. if your name's Grundy and you're a wrestler, I guess that follows. Like that definitely tracks. So
it sounds like
Yeah.
it, yeah. Feeling Grundy training session on the mat today.
see, when you say it, I feel gross. I don't know. I feel a little different when you say it. Don't say it.
Oh, man. Wrestling practice is tough. I'm feeling Grundy, man. I gotta take a shower. That'll do it for Throwing Elbows this week. You can catch us on Twitter at Throwing Elbows, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Stitcher, Throwing Elbows MMA, and our written work, as always, is on CagesidePress.com. Same day, same place next week. We are out.
Peace, people.